Hello, my true crime fanatics. Welcome to another episode of my true crime. I am Cindy, and I will be diamond painting while talking about future cases. I'm going to put this at the beginning of every video moving forward because I mean absolutely no disrespect to the victims or their families by diamond painting. It's what I do here on my channel, and I do have a very strong interest in true crime, and the reason I talk about these cases is one, to let family know that their loved ones are still remembered, and they are being talked about here on my channel. Also to bring awareness, like the domestic violence, and so on and so forth. It's all to bring awareness. I will be talking about criminal conduct that can range in various forms, violence, sexual assault, murder, and the likes. And I mean absolutely no disrespect. All opinions that I do share while discussing the cases are mine and mine alone. I do throw them in there every now and then. All information that I have found to talk about in my episodes is all information that I have found throughout the internet and compiled into one video. It's all my own research, and yeah, I have to say it is for entertainment. I want to say that loosely because it is true crime, but it is for entertainment purposes only that we are discussing these cases. And of course, all suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I will put this at the beginning of each video because it's a disclaimer of sorts. I do appreciate you joining me. If you enjoy true crime and you enjoy diamond painting, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and feel free to leave your thoughts and comments down below. I love it when I get interaction on my true crime cases, and you'll feel free to do that. If you can thumbs up and do all that YouTubey stuff, it really helps get the videos out there, and I do appreciate that. But yeah, without any further ado, let's dive into today's case. And thank you for being here, and thank you for giving me a couple of minutes of your time to kind of put that out there. I do appreciate it. On to today's episode. Hello, my true crime fanatics. I am working on Mr. Osprey. Dun, dun, dun. I'm about halfway. I'm about halfway, on that halfway section, I want to say. But obviously, I'm working on his shoulder right now. But today, I want to put another disclaimer out there. We are going to be talking about the death of children, okay? And I know that is a very sensitive thing to some, so if you do need to click out, please do so, because it's not going to be an easy listening one for sure. But it is, if you are still here, we are going to be talking about Janine Jones. My gosh. Let's just dive straight in because This is not good. It's very, very tragic. And also frustrating. As I said in my disclaimer part of the video, all opinions that I do share here are my own. You can agree or disagree in the comments section. That's what it's for. But without any further ado, Janine Jones, who I'm just going to call Jones. She is the perpetrator in this after all. So, Jones was adopted by a nightclub owner and his wife, and she worked as a beautician before attending nursing school in the late 1970s. And Jones, she was married to her high school sweetheart between 1968 and 1974, and they had one child together during that time. The relationship ended up in divorce, and 3 years later, Jones and her husband, they reconciled, and they had another child in 1977. So she has 2 children, and yeah. Just before her indictment, she married a 19-year-old nursing assistant who filed for divorce a short time later after her indictment. While Jones, she worked as a licensed vocational nurse known as an LVN at the Bexar County Hospital, which is now the University Hospital of San Antonio. And she worked in the pediatric intensive care unit. Now, while she was working here, a statistically improbable number of children died under her care. Now, because the hospital feared of being sued, it simply asked all of its LVNs, including Jones, to resign, and staffed the pediatric ICU exclusively with registered nurses. No further investigation was pursued by that hospital. It just went, something's going on here. It's one of you guys, so can you all resign and go and get other jobs elsewhere, and we're going to fill this unit full of registered nurses instead. And that was it. Problem solved. Except it wasn't, was it? Because she went and got another job. Jones left and took a position at a pediatrics clinic in Kerrville, Texas, some 60 miles northwest of San Antonio. It was here that she was charged. Okay, I'm not going to just spoil that just yet. The doctor in the office discovered 2 puncture marks in a bottle of... I'm going to put it on the screen because, I can't pronounce things like this. In the drug storage, where only she and Jones had access. Now, this drug, it's a powerful, short-acting paralytic that causes temporary paralysis of all skeletal muscles, as well as those that control breathing. The drug is used as part of a general anaesthetic. A patient cannot breathe while under the influence of this drug, and in small children, cardiac arrest is the ultimate result of deoxygenation due to lack of respiration. Contents of the apparently full bottle were later found to be diluted with saline. I mean, that goes far beyond premeditation, right? If you are using, you're piercing the bottle and taking some out, and then going in the same hole and putting saline in there. In 1985, Jones was originally sentenced to 99 years in prison for killing 15-month-old Chelsea McLennan with that drug I mentioned earlier. She was subsequently charged with harming Brandy on August 27th, Chris Parker and Jimmy Pearson on August 30th, Misty on September 3rd, Jacob Evans on September 17th. All indictment charges that the nurse intentionally and knowingly injured the children by injecting them with that drug and some other drug. Later that year, she was sentenced to a concurrent term of 60 years in prison for nearly killing Rolando with heparin. As of May 2016, Jones was held at the Lane Murray Unit of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. She has been scheduled for a mandatory release in 2018 due to Texas law meant to prevent prison overcrowding. To avoid this, Jones was indicted on May the 25th, 2017 for the murder of 11-month-old Joshua Sawyer. Nico LaHood and an attorney stated that additional charges could be filed in the deaths of other children. But due to the mandatory early release law covering Jones's original conviction, she would otherwise have been released upon completing a third of her original sentence. The new charges were filed to prevent her release. In April 2018, a judge in San Antonio denied a request to dismiss 5 new murder indictments against Jones. On January the 16th, 2020, Jones pleaded guilty to the murder of 11-month-old Joshua on December 12, 1981, as part of a plea bargain, in which 4 other charges were dropped. She was sentenced to life in prison. She will not be eligible for parole until she is roughly 87 years old. I mean, how insane is that? Truly, how insane. You can, not so much now. I mean, this was a law back in 1985. And then you can be released after serving a third of your sentence because, the prison might get overcrowded. And she was charged with 2 to begin with. 2 confirmed, possibly over 60 victims. She is 74 years old, so she's got another 10 years. Oh my gosh. 99 years with triple credit was her criminal penalty. Iconic horror writer Stephen King has stated in interviews that the antagonist of his standalone novel Misery Me and Carl were talking about this the other day. We kind of want to watch it again because, you know, it's been so many years since I watched that. But we were talking about that the other day. The Annie Wilkes character takes inspiration in part from Jones. Wilkes is a retired nurse who has a long history of serial murder, including of infants, when she was a paediatric nurse, before she holds a severely injured, struggling writer Paul Sheldon captive in her cabin. The actress who portrayed her, Kathy Bates, she did such an amazing job. Like, oh my god, is wildly acclaimed for her performance in the role, from which she earned the 1990 Academy Award for Best Actress. She was portrayed by Susan Rotten in the television movie Deadly Medicine in 1991 and by Alicia Bhatia in the straight-to-video movie Mass Murder in 2002. She also featured in a Discovery Channel documentary, we'll have to watch that, Lethal Injection, Forensic Files, Season 5, Episode 10, entitled Nursery Crimes, a Season 1 episode of the British documentary Nurses Who Kill, as well as Dark Secrets. Oh my gosh. Oh, Beverly Allitt was another one, wasn't she? Oh my gosh. We might as well talk about her while we're here, mightn't we? Beverly Allitt, we might as well do them both. While I've got the disclaimer out there that we will be talking about innocent children. Beverly Gale Allitt was born on the 4th of October in 1968 and grew up in the village of Corby Glen, near the town of Grantham. She had 2 sisters and a brother. Her father, Richard, worked in an off-licence and her mother was a school cleaner. Allitt attended Charles Reed Secondary Modern School, having failed the test to enter an all-girls school. She often volunteered for babysitting jobs. She left school at the age of 16 and took a course in nursing at Grantham College. Now, just a side note here, I was a student nurse and I did 16 months before I kind of got into it with one of the people there, one of the tutors, I guess. And I told him to shove it because I was suspended for no reason and targeted, I think. But I don't understand someone who will do a 3-year course. That's quite intense because you have to do essays, you have to go on all of these placements. It's a lot. And I had 2 kids and also on the back of my history of post-traumatic stress disorder. But they do all of that to then go on to do these heinous acts, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Allitt had attacked 13 children, 4 fatally, over a 59-day period. It was only following the death of Becky Phillips that medical staff became suspicious of the number of cardiac arrests on the children's ward, and police were called in. It was found that Allitt was the only nurse on duty for all the attacks on the children and had access to the drugs used. 4 of Allitt's victims had died. She was charged with 4 counts of murder, 11 counts of attempted murder and 11 counts of causing grievous bodily harm. Allitt entered a plea of not guilty to all the charges. Like, what? Not guilty. I guess she's going to say that it was, it could have been another nurse. You know, doesn't mean it was me. On the 28th of May 1993, she was found guilty on each charge and sentenced to 13 concurrent terms of life imprisonment, which she is serving at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire. In the 2018 documentary Trevor McDonald and the Killer Nurse, Allitt reportedly told close friends before her trial that she would never go to prison. After 1 week in prison, she refused to eat or drink and was moved to Rampton Secure Hospital. 2 experts, forensic psychiatrist Jeremy Coyd and criminologist Elizabeth Yardley, examined Allitt's mental state and when she was arrested, and concluded she was not mentally ill and should be in prison, not a hospital. Allitt reportedly admitted to all 13 of her crimes in a failed application to remain at Rampton Secure Hospital and permanently avoid prison. None of the families of Allitt's victims had been told of her full confession in the failed application. On December the 6th, 2007, Mr. Justice Stanley Burnton, sitting in the High Court of Justice in London, ordered Allitt to serve the original minimum sentence of 30 years. It was reported that some families of Allitt's victims had previously mistakenly believed that her minimum tariff had been set at 40 years. Her minimum tariff expired in November 2021 and is now eligible for release on parole. Allitt's motives have never been fully explained. According to one theory, she showed symptoms of a fictitious disorder, also known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This disorder is described as involving a pattern of abuse in which a perpetrator ascribes symptoms to or physically falsifies illnesses in someone under their care in order to attract attention for themselves. On October 3rd, 2023, it was reported that Allitt was appearing before a mental health tribunal to be assessed for a potential transfer to mainstream prison. If the transfer takes place, Allitt will be eligible for parole after 6 months. So that was 2023. Oh my gosh. Where is she today? She's still in prison. She received 13 life sentences and was told by a judge it was unlikely she would ever be released. Although she became eligible for parole in November 2021, she remains in prison. Yep, she's still there. Oh my gosh. So there is 2 disgusting human beings. Oh my gosh. There's another one from England. How have I not heard of this case? Lucy Letby. Oh my God. She was arrested in 2020. Letby was charged in November 2020 with 8 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder and pleaded not guilty. Prosecution evidence included test results showing some victims had antibodies consistent with insulin. Oh my gosh, insulin. Testimony of Letby's falsification of patient records, her removal of sensitive nursing handover sheets from her workplace, and her behaviour and communications. In August 2023, Letby was found guilty on 7 counts each of murder and attempted murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order. That's very rare in the UK, I have to say. I think these people all deserve that, but still it is quite rare. Because even Alec wasn't given a whole life order. An application to appeal her convictions was refused by the Court of Appeal in May 2024, and she continued to assert her innocence of all charges in a retrial in July 2024, where she was further convicted of attempting to murder another child at the hospital. The jury at her original trial had failed to reach a verdict on the charge. Management at the Countess of Chester Hospital were criticised for ignoring warnings about Letby. The British government has commissioned an independent statutory inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the murders. Since the conclusion of her trials, some experts have expressed doubts about the safety of her convictions. Lucy Letby was born on the 4th of January 1990 in Herefordshire. The only child of a finance manager and an accounts clerk. She was educated at Earlstone School and Sixth Form College. A friend who knew her since secondary school told the BBC, quote, "She'd had a difficult birth herself and she was very grateful for being alive to the nurses who would have helped save her life," end quote. This, the friend states, had led her to want to be a nurse all her life. Letby pursued her education in nursing at the University of Chester, where she also worked as a student nurse during her 3 years of training, carrying out placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital and the Countess of Chester Hospital. Letby was the first member of her family to study at university and graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, with a speciality in child nursing in September. Letby began working as a registered nurse at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2012. In a 2013 staff profile, she said that she was responsible for, quote, caring for a wide range of babies requiring various levels of support, end quote. She said that she enjoyed, quote, seeing them progress and supporting their families, end quote. Letby also took part in a campaign to raise funds for a new neonatal unit at the hospital. Letby told others that she found non-intensive care work boring. Letby had 2 training placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital in late 2012 and early 2015, which came under investigation after her conviction. In 2015, Letby qualified to work with infants in intensive care, and in April 2016, she was reassigned by the ward manager from night shifts to day shifts. In June 2016, Stephen Brary, lead neonatologist, asked management to remove Letby from clinical duties pending an investigation into her conduct. Letby was transferred to the patient experience team in July 2016 and later to the risk and patient safety office, working there until her arrest in 2018. In June 2015, 4 collapses occurred in the same unit, the neonatal unit of Countess of Chester Hospital, 3 leading to infant deaths. The unit typically saw only 2 or 3 deaths a year, and the infants involved had failed to respond normally to resuscitation attempts. The unit manager and Stephen conducted an informal review and reported the incidents to the committee of the NHS Foundation Trust, responsible for addressing serious incidents. Upon review, the committee classed the deaths as medicational errors. Stephen Brary observed that Letby had been on shift for all the incidents, but considered it an unsurprising coincidence that there was only one other qualified junior nurse in the unit, and Letby often worked extra shifts to cover for staffing shortages. He stated, quote, "Nobody had any concerns about her practice," end quote. In 2023, reports from The Guardian and The Times stated he was suspicious of Letby beginning in 2015 and accused the hospital of negligence for ignoring his concerns. Interesting. During a hospital visit in February 2016, the CQC, now I don't know if it's the same in America, but it's the Care Quality Commission, and they are who you answer to. Like, if they're coming down on you, you're in trouble, you know. They were informed of difficulties in raising concerns with managers, but heard no mention of an elevated mortality rate. The CQC's report identified issues of short staffing and skill mix issues within the unit. Yet it praised the overall positive culture of the trust, where staff felt well supported, able to raise concerns and develop professionally. In May 2016, the executive team deemed the spike in deaths to be coincidental and no substantial action was taken. Reports by a nationwide project found a neonatal death rate at least 10% higher than expected between June 2015 and June 2016. Additionally, the neonatal death total in 2015 doubled that of the previous year. The mortality rate has risen above what might be considered normal. Stephen Breary phoned the duty executive on the 24th of June 2016 following the 6th and 7th unexplained death shortly after Letby returned from a holiday in Ibiza, demanding that she be removed from the unit. The duty executive insisted that Letby was safe to work. The Trust's executive directors convened to address the question whether to involve the police, determining Letby's involvement to be circumstantial. The medical director and chief executive instead organised a review through the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health. The unit's services were scaled back by hospital managers on the 7th of July 2016, cutting cot space numbers and no longer accommodating premature births before the 32-week mark. The RCPCH, the Royal College of Paediatric and Child Health, review was initiated in September 2016 with a narrow scope that excluded investigating Letby's actions or the deaths, but instead focused on the unit's general service. In October 2016, they reported they could not find a definite explanation for the increase in mortality rate at the unit, but found insufficient staffing and senior cover. The medical director asked for Jane Howden from Great Ormond Street Hospital to carry out a detailed case review recommended by the RCPCH. Howden identified 4 cases that potentially benefit from a local forensic review as to circumstances, personnel, etc. Records of the hospital board meeting show the medical director telling the board members that the RCPCH and Howden reviews concluded that the deaths in the neonatal unit were due to issues with leadership and timely intervention. The chair said he was misled about the scope of the review and its findings. In September 2016, Letby raised a formal grievance about her late June 2016 transfer from clinical duties to the hospital's risk and patient safety office. This grievance was upheld by the board in January 2017, which determined her removal had been orchestrated by the consultants with no hard evidence. The medical director commented in the report that the Trust's intention was to protect Lucy Letby from those allegations. The chief executive had met with Letby and her parents on December 22nd 2016 to apologise on behalf of the Trust and assure them that the doctors who made the allegations would be, quote, dealt with. He later ordered the consultants to send a letter of apology to Letby, which they did in February 2017. In March 2017, 4 consultants, including Stephen Breary and Ravi, asked management to involve the police after receiving advice for further investigation from the regional neonatal lead. They then met with Cheshire Constabulary, on the 27th of April 2017 to raise their concerns with Letby due to return to work on the 3rd of May. Brary and Ravi told the police that infant collapses are nearly always explainable. In May 2024, staff writer Rachel for The New Yorker reported that a study of infant deaths in southeast in London, published in the Journal of Maternal, Fetal and Neonatal Medicine, found that about half of the unexplained infant collapses remain unexplained after autopsy. The Trust publicly announced the involvement of the police in May 2017, stating this move was to, quote, seek assurances that enable us to rule out unnatural causes of death, end quote. The investigation designated Operation Hummingbird lasted a year. Senior investigating officer Paul Hughes later said, quote, the initial focus was around the hypothesis of what could have occurred. So generic hypothesis of it could be natural occurring deaths, it could be natural occurring collapses, it could be a virus. And then one of these hypotheses was that obviously it could be inflicted harm. On the 3rd of July 2018, police arrested Letby on suspicion of 8 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder. After Letby's arrest, police began investigating her entire career, including her time at Liverpool Women's Hospital. Letby was bailed on the 6th of July 2018, re-arrested on the 10th of June 2019, and bailed again on the 13th of June. 10th of November 2020, she was arrested once again and denied bail. Letby denied all charges against her and pointed to issues of hospital hygiene and staffing levels. Letby's trial began at Manchester Crown Court on the 10th of October 2022 before Mr. Justice Goss. She pleaded not guilty to 7 counts of murder and 15 counts of attempted murder. Letby's parents and the families of the victims attended the trial. The child victims were referred to as Child A to Child Q. The press secretary around the identities of these 17 babies and 9 colleagues who gave evidence was rarely seen outside proceedings involving matters of national security. 2 years before the criminal trial, Mrs. Justice Steen banned the identification of the living victims until their 18th birthdays. Several adult witnesses requested to be anonymous, which is rarely granted unless testifying would endanger their lives. The judge approved these requests, ruling that getting testimony from the colleagues was more important than them being publicly identifiable. The mother of one victim described hearing her infant scream and walking in to find him with blood around his mouth and Letby in the room. She testified that Letby had attributed to the blood to a gastric tube, saying, "Trust me, I'm a nurse." The baby's condition soon worsened and he died a few hours later. Letby sent a sympathy card to the parents on the day of the baby's funeral. See, that's weird. Is it not? I think that's weird. Upon Letby's arrest, it was found on her phone that she had photographed the card before she sent it and still kept pictures of it. Weird. It was also revealed during the trial that Letby had to be told more than once not to enter a room where the parents of one of the victims were grieving. Letby told a colleague that taking child A to the mortuary was, quote, the hardest thing she ever had to do, end quote. The Crown Prosecution Service cited texts sent by Letby to friends, describing them as a live blogging of events and as displaying intrusive curiosity. 3 days after the death of child A, Letby had messaged the manager of the unit offering to do more shifts, saying, quote, "From a confidence point of view, I need to take an ITU baby soon. Kiss." End quote. 2 days later, she had a heated text exchange with a colleague over her manager refusing to let her go back onto the intensive care ward and remained on shift elsewhere in the hospital. Shortly after the exchange, child C's condition worsened and died the following day. After the third baby death in a fortnight in 2015, Letby replied to a text from a sympathetic colleague saying that she would keep ploughing on, and added, "I think there is an element of fate involved. There's a reason for everything." End quote. About 2 hours after the collapse of child M, Letby sent texts reading, quote, "Work has been shit, but I have just won 135 on the Grand National," horse emoji, end quote. And "Unpacking party sounds good to me with my flavoured vodka, ha ha." Letby had also searched for the families of several infant victims on Facebook, including on the anniversaries of their babies' deaths on Christmas Day. The prosecution said that she would search for a number of them within minutes of each other, as if hunting for grief. In total, Letby had searched for 11 of the families affected. Letby testified that this was out of general curiosity. "I was always on my phone." She searched for the families of infants 31 times during the year the deaths took place. She searched for other people 2,287 times. The prosecution in Letby's case argued that suspicious incidents began in 2015 when Letby qualified to work with infants in intensive care, and that in April 2016, when the ward manager reassigned Letby from night shifts to day shifts, their distribution shifted accordingly. A consultant testified that in February 2016, he had walked in on Letby standing over an infant in distress, and she was failing to intervene. He said that Letby had responded to his questions by telling him that the infant had only just started declining. The infant in question survived the collapse. Between March and June of 2016, another 3 babies almost died while under Letby's care. Towards the end of June, she was helping care for triplets. Consultants claimed that they had been in good health, and the deaths of 2 boys on consecutive days were causing staff considerable distress and shock. In August 2015, one infant, referred to as Child E, died, and within hours his twin, Child F, became seriously unwell, but fully recovered later that same day. During the police investigation, a doctor helping police look over clinical records noted unusual blood test results for Child F and one other infant, Child L. A third blood test result with similar characteristics was later discovered in the clinical records by the prosecution's lead expert witness. The first 2 of these test results resulted in attempted murder charges and became central to the trial, but Letby was never charged in relation to the third. The prosecution argued that the test results demonstrated deliberate poisoning by insulin. 2 of their medical expert witnesses described this evidence as a smoking gun. At trial, Letby herself accepted the prosecution's claim that the test results showed that 2 infants had been deliberately injected with insulin, but denied that she had done it. Since the trial, this interpretation of the blood test results has been disputed by experts. At the same time as Child L's blood sugar collapse, his twin brother, Child M, unexpectedly collapsed while under Letby's care, but managed to survive after 30 minutes of resuscitation. The prosecution argued that Letby had injected air into his bloodstream. The prosecution also noted that although by this point she was not supposed to work night shifts, Letby was caring for Child L, as she specifically volunteered to do extra shifts to care for her. A paediatrician testified that he and other clinicals had previously raised concerns about Letby, but were told by hospital administration that they should not really be saying such things and not to make a fuss. Another doctor testified that Letby commented an hour before one victim died, "He's not leaving here alive, is he?" Although the consultants made their desire to have Letby removed from their duties known to the hospital staff after the triplet incident, this was refused, and the next day another baby almost died under Letby's care. The prosecution presented the jury with a shift card showing Letby as the only nurse on duty for 25 incidents, referring to the chart in his opening remarks, prosecuting barrister Nick Johnson said, quote, "By a process of simple elimination," end quote, "Letby must be responsible for the incidents. Since the trial, statistics and others have questioned the use of this chart and the criteria by which incidents were included on it or not. After her removal from duty and to the downgrade of the unit to no longer admit infants requiring intensive care or those born after 32 weeks, the unexpected deaths stopped. Letby was accused of falsifying times on patient records as to not be placed at the scene of the collapse. She denied doing so and suggested the changes were errors made by her or other nurse. Criminal psychologist David Holmes has argued that the varied methods she used to attack her victims, such as insulin and air injections and overfeeding milk, would all have been specifically chosen as things that would dissipate and not be easily detected afterwards. Searches of Letby's and her parents' homes and Letby's handbag revealed a number of post-it notes handwritten by Letby. These included fragmentary phrases such as "Help. I'm sorry that you couldn't have a chance at life. I don't want to do this anymore. Not good enough. Why me? I haven't done anything wrong. We tried our best and it wasn't enough. I am evil. I did this. I killed them on purpose because I'm not good enough to care for them." Another document that was presented said, "I don't know if I killed them. Maybe I did. Maybe this is all down to me." The defence argued that the notes were the anguished outpouring of a young woman in fear and despair, written while Letby was dealing with the employment issues, including a grievance procedure with the NHS Trust. The prosecution said that the notes expressed Letby's frustration at being removed from the neonatal unit. Letby herself denied that the notes were a confession, describing them as a reflection of her mental turmoil, written while she was being investigated. After the trial, it emerged that the notes had been written on the advice of Letby's GP to help her process the extreme stress of being investigated. The Guardian, in its reporting after the verdict, described the notes as the closest the prosecution had to a confession. The Telegraph highlighted that one note which read, "I'll never marry or have children. I'll never know what it's like to have a family." Letby's diary was also found to be marked with the initials of the dead babies. Initials of those who had died were found to have been marked on the dates they were born, the days the prosecution alleged she attacked them, and on the days they died. Since the trial, some experts have contested the prosecution's interpretation of the notes. Searchers of Letby's home found sensitive medical documents under her bed, including nursing handover sheets, resuscitation records, blood gas readings, Of the 257 sheets, 21 related to infants Letby had allegedly harmed. Letby testified that she collected paper and had forgotten to remove the sheets from her pockets at the hospital, and also claimed that she could not destroy them, but a paper shredder was found at her home. Letby herself gave evidence to the court in May 2023, breaking down in tears and claiming she was made to feel as though she were incompetent but meant no harm. Letby said the allegations had negatively impacted her mental health, saying, quote, "I don't think you can be accused of anything worse than that. I just changed as a person. My mental health deteriorated. I felt isolated from my friends on the unit." End quote. It was also noted that she repeatedly contradicted herself, muddled up her story, and became more and more frustrated with the prosecution's questions, which was unlike her usual calm demeanour. Letby's defence lawyer said that Letby was a dedicated nurse in a system which had failed her. The prosecution's case was driven by the assumption that someone was doing deliberate harm, combined with the coincidence that on certain occasions of Miss Letby's presence, and that there had been a massive failure of care in a busy hospital neonatal unit, far too great to blame on one person. The defence argued that extraordinary bleeding in a baby boy murdered by Letby could have been caused by a rigid wire or tube. The defence argued that the evidence presented by the prosecution was insufficient to justify their theories of how the infants were harmed. They argued that the evidence suggesting air embolism was so weak that there was no case to answer. Imagine being the parent in the courtroom hearing that. Defence barrister Benjamin Myers observed that air embolism made no appearance in Letby's internet search history. However, they did not call any medical experts of their own to the witness box. The only defence witness other than Letby herself was a plumber who testified that plumbing issues at the hospital led to sewage washing up into the sinks on the unit. He told the jury that issues like this at the hospital led him to being called out maybe weekly. The defence argued that these hygiene issues could contribute to explaining the unit's high mortality rate. The final verdicts were returned by the jury on the 18th of August 2023. Letby was found guilty on 7 counts of murder of 7 babies. She was also found guilty of 7 counts of attempted murder of 6 infants. Letby was found not guilty on 2 counts of attempted murder. The jury was unable to reach verdicts on 6 further attempted murder charges. Nicholas Johnson asked the court for 28 days to consider whether a retrial would be sought for these 6 counts. On August the 21st, 2023, Letby was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order, the most severe sentence possible under English law. She is the 4th woman in UK legal history to receive such a sentence. Goss said that Letby committed a cruel, calculated and cynical campaign of child murder involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children. In closing, he stated that there was deep malevolence bordering on sadism. You have no remorse. There are no mitigating factors. The offence are of sufficient severity to require a whole life order. Letby opted not to attend the sentencing hearing and as such heard neither the various impact statements by victims which were read out, nor her sentence being passed. In response, Alex Chalk, Secretary of State for Justice, wrote that the government will, quote, look at options to change the law at the earliest opportunity to compel defendants to attend their sentencing. On the 30th of August 2023, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced that the UK government would introduce legislation to Parliament that would compel convicted criminals to attend their sentencing hearings by force if necessary, or face the prospect of more time in prison. She's got a whole life order. I don't think more time in prison is going to really cut that, but sure, I'm sure that'll work. I mean, that is extreme. I did say that in the beginning. I know Rose West was one of them. I think Joanna Dehaney was one of them. Not sure who the other one was. Myra Hindley. There you go. That's how into true crime I am. I didn't even Google it. I knew. But yeah. So there's 4 that have been given that sentence. After the trial, Letby was transferred to a closed prison for women in County Durham. That's where I was born. As of January 2024, she's being held at HM Prison, His Majesty's Prison, Bronzefield. No motive was upheld by the court, though it's not required for finding of guilty. The prosecution in Letby's case suggested several theories, including boredom, thrill-seeking, and playing God, as possible motives for the killings. They also alleged that Letby had a secret relationship with a married doctor involved in some of the cases. As evidence, they cited Letby's frequent texts to him on certain night shifts, as well as a piece of paper from Letby's office where she had written phrases including, "I trusted you with everything and loved you. You were my best friend, and please help me." Letby denied all these suggestions, including the idea that she had a relationship with or a crush on the doctor in question. The former detective who acted as a lead investigator in the Beverly Allitt case drew parallels between Allitt and Letby, suggesting that Letby might have copied her methods. Criminal psychologists Dominic Wilmot and David Holmes suggested that Letby may have been motivated by fictitious disorder imposed on another, a theory also proposed about Allitt, who we talked about earlier. David Wilson, I'm pretty sure he's the dude that I can see when I think of a criminologist. He's a professor of criminology, published, I'll put a picture up here, if I'm correct, I'll know it by then. Published an August 2023 opinion piece in The Guardian argued that Letby was driven by a hero complex. Later that month, Wilson discussed Letby on Newsnight, where he argued that healthcare killers join the profession in order to target vulnerable victims, such as the elderly or the very, very young. But again, how can you sit and pretend that you absolutely love nursing and your whole intention is to get into that neonatal unit or that elderly care home or whatever? It's like really, really scary to think that, and to be so controlled until you qualify as a nurse. Like, I don't understand the psychology behind that. I'll be honest. Okay, we don't have a picture of David Wilson. I will Google him. Okay, so on the 13th of March 2020, while out on bail, Letby was placed in an interim suspension by the Nursing and Midwifery Council, that is the nursing person. On the 18th of August 2023, Andrea Sutcliffe, Chief Executive and Registrar of the Nursing and Midwifery Council, stated that Letby, quote, remains suspended from our register and will now move forward with our regulatory action seeking to strike her off the register, end quote. Letby was removed from the nursing register on the 12th of December 2023, having informed the Nursing and Midwifery Council that she did not accept guilt but did not contest the removal. In 2024, Letby applied to the Court of Appeal for permission to appeal her conviction, which a judge refused. Letby renewed her application, and at a 3-day hearing in April 2024, her lawyers put forward 4 grounds of appeal concerning the trial judge's refusal of applications. But in May 2024, the 3 judges of the Court of Appeal refused permission to appeal. As part of the appeal, Letby's counsel, Ben Myers, again tried to question the inclusion of evidence by a doctor and the prosecution's lead witness, saying it should have been disallowed as evidence as he has been, quote, dogmatic and biased, end quote. The appeal judge rejected these criticisms, ruling that it was incorrect to state that he lacked impartiality, and that he was indeed well qualified to give an opinion. The appeal judges were of the view that it was up to the jury to assess whether he was biased or not, basically. The second ground for appeal was that the medical evidence that Letby had fatally injected air into the baby's bloodstream was very weak. Whilst the third ground was that the judge had been wrong to direct the jury that they could convict even if they were unsure of the precise method used by Letby for every case. The final ground was that the judge had failed to investigate the impartiality of one of the jurors. All of these 4 grounds were refused. Oh my gosh, by the court, with the judge's subsequent written statement concluding that the trial had been thoughtful, fair, comprehensive and correct, and that none of the 4 legal challenges advanced by Letby were arguable. saying that the criteria for the admission of fresh evidence had not been met. At a hearing on September the 25th in 2023, the Crown Prosecution Service confirmed that there would be a retrial on one of the 6 counts of attempted murder against Letby, on which the jury at the original trial could not reach a verdict. This was not to start until after judges had decided whether or not to grant Letby permission to appeal against her existing convictions. Oh my God, are you getting confused? Because, oh my God, just stop now. You've been found guilty. You've got a whole life order. Which brings me to this point. I know every baby, every infant deserves justice. I am not taking that away from any one of the parents, but she is in prison for her whole life order. I would live knowing I would live knowing that she's never coming out of jail. She's going to spend the rest of her life in prison and put all of those deaths on her. You know, that's what I would do. The retrial started on the 10th of June 2024. The prosecution asserted that the child, K, repeatedly deteriorated when left alone with Letby, despite the previous nurse testifying that the baby's condition seemed stable when she left him. The consultant on duty that night was Ravi, and he alleged that he had gone into the nursery to reassure himself that the baby would be okay in Letby's care, only to supposedly find Letby standing next to the child's cot and not doing anything or calling for assistance while the baby was in distress. It was established that the distress had been caused by the child's breathing tube becoming dislodged, and this happened again twice in the next few hours, which the prosecution asserted occurred when Letby was present. On the 2nd of July, Letby was found guilty of attempted murder, and on the 5th of July 2024, she was sentenced to another whole life order. She will try to appeal this last conviction on October the 24th in 2024. Good luck to you. Following the verdict, it was reported that police were investigating whether Letby harmed other babies. It was a continuing investigation of incidents which detectives had identified as suspicious at the Countess of Chester Hospital, involving around 30 other infants. Neonatologists, don't know if I'm saying that correct, looked into about 4,000 admissions at the hospital and Liverpool Women's Hospital, where Letby had worked from 2012 to 2015, and were to pass on any cases of unexpected and unexplained deteriorations to the police. At least one family was told by police that the birth of their child at the latter hospital was part of the inquiry. Cheshire Police have said that further charges could possibly be brought against Letby as a result of these further investigations. On October the 4th in 2023, Cheshire Constabulary announced an investigation into corporate manslaughter at the Countess of Chester Hospital. After Letby's conviction, I'm not going to go into all of that, but after her conviction, the British government ordered an independent inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the murders. And yeah, I'm not going to go there. So, calls for regulation and reform. The British Medical Association, which represents doctors, called for a process for NHS managers and healthcare administrators to be held accountable for mismanagement, in a similar way to know that the General Medical Council may strike off doctors who harm patients. A neonatal consultant who alerted administrators about his suspicions about Letby also called for regulations of healthcare management. So you had some people saying, please guys, listen to me. This woman is causing harm because there's a spike. And like they said, there's only less than a handful that pass away of natural causes or unable to help. It's less than a handful of babies, and all of a sudden you get Beverly Alec come to work, and it's quadrupling, like, per month, not even a year. Like, then you've got Letby coming to work, and then you have people going, guys, please, you're the highest I can go up the chain, can you please do something? And they're all like, oh, stop making a fuss. It's really, really concerning. Letby has always maintained her innocence and had the support of friends and some of her former colleagues, and some medical and statistical experts have also expressed doubts about her convictions. That Letby's defence only called 2 witnesses at her trial, Letby herself and a plumber, has been taken by some to suggest that the jury did not get a fair opportunity to hear a balanced view of the evidence. Since the conclusion of her second trial in 2024 and the lifting of associated reporting restrictions, some of these concerns have been published in the press. Just a side note here, but why did they only have Letby and the plumber? Because, that's down to them, surely, to get people to come and take the stand in and defend her in any way possible. It's absolutely insane. I say it's insane because they're appealing on the grounds that they only had her and a plumber when it was their job to get more people. Right? Makes sense? Okay, so some people are coming out publicly and saying that because Letby maintains her innocence and she's had the support of friends and some of her former colleagues, but medical and statistical experts have also expressed doubts about her convictions. Letby's defence only called 2 witnesses at her trial has been taken by some to suggest that the jury didn't get a fair opportunity. Well, I think that's down to the defence to go find people who are willing to stand up and say she's an awesome person and wouldn't do that. But anyway, in an article in The Guardian, investigative journalist Felicity Lawrence wrote that she had spoken to experts who expressed concerns about the evidence used to convict Letby, namely, quote, several leading consultants, I can't say this word, neonatologists. I don't think I'm saying that right, but some with current or recent leadership roles and several senior neonatal nurses. Others are public health professionals, GPs, biochemists, and a leading government microbiologist and lawyers, end quote. Though most did not declare Letby innocent, they said their concerns called into doubt the safety of her convictions. So, why didn't the defence... I'll do their job for them, okay? Why didn't the defence go to other neonatal specialists from different hospitals and kind of ask their opinion? Or, I don't know, GPs or microbiologists? Why didn't they go and find these people to come on the stand and contradict what the prosecution is saying? Why didn't they do that? Anyway, interviewed for a Channel 5 documentary about the doubts concerning the case, a consultant and an Ockenden review team member expressed doubts about the safety of the convictions. Addressing some of the medical evidence, she described it as implausible, and that's a polite way of putting it, she says. Other experts on the programme disagreed with overturning of the original pathologist's reports into the infant deaths. They note that the majority of the infants Letby was convicted of murdering had undergone autopsies, and none of the original pathologist reports had suspected an unnatural death. Some experts have challenged the evidence that Letby poisoned 2 infants with insulin. Experts in toxicology and insulin, Professor Alan Wayne Jones, has argued that the type of test which produced the results used at the trial is, quote, not sufficient for use as evidence in a criminal prosecution, end quote. So where was he on the defence team? Sorry, I'm getting a little bit too involved. A guidance note about the test from the lab that carried it out reads, quote, if insulin administration is suspected as a cause of hypoglycemia, please inform the laboratory so that the sample can be referred externally for analysis, end quote. In an article for The Telegraph questioning the conviction, science editor Sarah Knapton notes this guidance and the fact that no further tests were ever done. Reviewing the test results for one infant, Professor Joseph Wolfsdorf, a specialist in child hypoglycemia at Harvard Medical School, told her they, quote, made no sense and were not what one would expect in a case of extremely high insulin due to administration. Her article quotes several expert neonatologists who described the claim that Letby had murdered 3 infants by injecting air into the stomachs via a gastric tube. They described them as rubbish, ridiculous, implausible, and fantastical. The method was considered by experts she spoke to not to be practically feasible. Oh my gosh, they're just arguing it. The use of statistical analysis by the prosecution has attracted criticism from various experts. In 2024, the Royal Statistics Society issued a statement that they, quote, were aware of concerns raised by some members and the wider statistical community, end quote, and welcomed an investigation. One of the key pieces of evidence was a chart that showed Letby had been present for a number of deaths and other incidents on the neonatal unit. However, the chart left out deaths and other incidents that had occurred when Letby was not present. A professor specialising in the intersection of law and science at the University of Edinburgh argued that a shift chart was a result of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. I get that. If you're going to show a chart where she's on shift and the spike in collapses they call them, but collapses or infant deaths, you're going to have to include ones that happened when she wasn't there. But again, that's the defence's job, isn't it? So yeah, they had staff issues that we know of. Timeline. Let's go through the timeline. Letby hadn't been on shift since the birth of child C, when an X-ray of the infant that was heavily discussed by the prosecution was taken. Shortly after the broadcast of a File on 4 program that discussed this case, Davy Evans, who served as the prosecution's lead expert witness, said that he no longer agrees with the prosecution's account of how the infant died, but instead claimed that Letby had killed him via another method. Now, just to go back to what the judge said, that they pulled up in the appeal, you can convict her even if you don't know the method that she used on each of the children, because that's what they are, right? They're children. So you might think, well, she's definitely guilty of A, B and C. I just don't know if she put the air in the tube, gave them insulin, etc. You can still find her guilty even though you don't know how. That's what he was saying. In August 2024, the Crown Prosecution Service admitted to the Telegraph that during the first trial swipe data for one of the doors to the neonatal intensive care unit had been mislabelled, such that entries and exits were reversed. Science editor Sarah Knapton highlighted several cases for which this faulty data could have affected the prosecution's account of events. The CPS refused to confirm to the paper whether the data for the other doors had been correctly labelled. Well, you can't say if you don't know. Best method. During the trial, handwritten notes found at Letby's home were presented by prosecution as amounting to a confession. I don't think they were used as a confession. I think it might have been hinted, but they were saying, look what she's been writing. Make up your own mind. Faye Skelton, a lecturer and specialist in forensic psychology, has highlighted that the notes also contain phrases that deny her guilt. She told Channel 5 that, quote, they are perfectly plausible as the output of someone who is suffering extreme mental distress. I do not see the notes as confession or as an admission of guilt. Again, not to be judgy, right, but I'm the prosecution, right, and I have this lady who I am convinced has harmed children. Then you have the defence, who should have pulled apart those notes and said, but hey, there were more than that, and these are the other ones, counteracting what they're saying. Like, in September 2024, The Guardian reported that the notes were written on the advice of counsellors as part of a therapeutic process. Richard Curran, the chair of Forensic Psychotherapy Society, was quoted saying, doodling, journaling is a way of taking control of your thoughts. I don't think it relates to a confession of any kind. I don't think it was used as a confession. I don't remember saying that at any point. Just my little tuppence worth that I keep throwing in. A number of medical experts questioned the veracity of the prosecution's witnesses. Davy Evans, a professional expert witness, an NHS consultant, and Roger Norwich, a medico-legal expert, have made official complaints to the General Medical Council about Evans' evidence. The theories proposed in court were not plausible, and the prosecution was full of medical inaccuracies. I wasn't there, so I can't say Letby was innocent, but I can see no proof of guilt. Evans rejected the suggestion that he was biased and pointed out that the defence at trial could have called an expert witness to challenge his opinions, but did not do so. There we go. I'm not the only one saying it. The New Yorker article also questioned the testimony of Evans, commenting that a report by Evans as an expert witness in a previous case had been deemed worthless and said to have included opinions that were outside of his professional competence by a Court of Appeals judge. Evans has said that he has received abuse by Letby's supporters online who doubt the safety of her conviction. Speaking to the BBC about this, he described it as being similar to intimidation received by doctors from supporters of outed abusers in the 80s and 90s. He has argued that people find it difficult to accept that a killer could be a young, white English nurse from a respectable background who hid in plain sight, adding, "It happened with Harold Shipman. It happened with Jimmy Savile. Oh my God. I was watching a documentary on him the other day. It is crucial to their getting away with it that they appear normal." The BBC reported how the barristers of the families had responded during the early stages of the inquiry, speaking of the anguish pro-Letby campaigns had caused with Peter Skelton. Quote, Lucy Letby's crimes, in particular, continue to be the subject of such conspiracies, some of which are grossly offensive and distressing for the families of her victims. End quote. In response to these doubts of Letby's conviction, these barristers argued for the inquiry to be publicly live-streamed, with Richard Baker asserting, quote, "They are toxic, they are often ill-informed, and they ultimately grow in the shadows. The more light that we put on this inquiry, the less space there is for speculation and conspiracy." However, the inquiry was unconvinced of the need to live stream and rejected the application. On the 9th of September 2024, it was reported that the police were investigating an alleged assault on a prosecution witness by a member of the public with pro-Letby views. That's pretty sad. And I thought it was all... Obviously, it's not completely secret, but I wouldn't know who any of the witnesses or people taking the stand, because some of them, the judge said that she would keep some of them anonymous. I'm pretty sure. Evans, the one that stood on the stand for the prosecution, has called for an investigation into the possibility of charges of corporate manslaughter in relation to the Letby case. The Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health stated, quote, "We must learn from these crimes and how Lucy Letby was able to bring harm to these babies so that no situation like this can ever happen again," end quote, and welcomed the independent inquiry. NHS England's Chief Nursing Officer, Dame Ruth May, issued a statement saying, quote, "The NHS is fully committed to doing everything we can to prevent anything like this ever happening again, and we welcome the independent inquiry announced by the Department of Health and Social Care to help ensure we learn every possible lesson from this awful case," end quote. On the 21st of August 2023, it was announced that the nursing director at the Countess of Chester Hospital, at the time Letby was based there, had been suspended from her job as a senior nursing officer at Northern Care Alliance NHS Foundation Trust, with immediate effect because of information that came to light during the trial. The Nursing and Midwifery Council subsequently announced she would face an investigation into her fitness to practice. She and other executives at the hospital have been accused of ignoring warnings about Letby. Now, Stephen, I've forgotten his surname, begins with a B. He kept saying to them, please get her off my team. She's causing harm. And then they put her in this job about patient safety or something. He was trying, and not just once, not just twice. He even said, as a last resort, I'm going to call the police in, because she's up to no good. I know she's up to no good, and you're not listening. I'll get the police involved. Boom. And I bet there's been no more since. It was reported that the British government were examining how Letby's pension can be stopped. The NHS pension scheme regulations provide a forfeit of pensions after a conviction of certain crimes. I don't think she's worried about that, to be honest, because she's going to be in prison. She's not coming out anytime soon. Yep, she's in for a whole life. It used to be called a whole life tariff. Now it's a whole life order. Oh my gosh. But there you go. you guys, there you go. Another long one, right? Another long one. It's just quite sad. And the running theme for today, in case you hadn't noticed, we had Janine Jones, we had Beverly Allett, and now Lucy Letby, all female nurses injuring children, and it goes against the very grain of who we are, because I'm not saying every female has to be a mother, that's not the case, but we have a protective instinct. And here are 3 individuals who go into the nursing profession. Do you know what I mean? It's terrifying. And this poor guy was going everywhere asking for help and ringing the alarm bells and was being told to stop making a fuss. Therefore, she had access to more and more children. So, I know. I think she's guilty of it. I think she's guilty because all you had was Letby and the plumber. It didn't really do her any favours. Why would you not go out of your way to get more people on side? Or, like he said, that was my opinion, that was my medical opinion. You could have got another person in who counteracted it, which is what happens. They pull up a specialist, the defence pull up a specialist, and they disagree with each other. I don't think the prosecution pulled up any plumbers. Like, oh my God. I know. You have to know. Let me know what you think. I know this has been a heavy episode because we've covered 3 people who went into a caring profession and didn't care at all. It's a pretty scary thought, isn't it? It's a pretty scary thought. But there you have it. That is my episode for this week. Wow. Nurses. My gosh. Well, thank you for joining me. I do appreciate it. And as always, leave your thoughts and comments down below. Janine Jones, Beverly Allett, Lucy Letby, all of the families affected by these 3 individuals, that is where I'm paying homage. 3 despicable human beings, all safely locked away in prison. I don't think any of them are going to see the light of day on the outside. I think they are firmly staying put. But my heart goes out to all the victims and all of those that are still coming forward or being highlighted and investigated. Who knows the total that Lucy Letby harmed and injured. There was one where they said they resuscitated them for 30 minutes. I hope that they're doing good now. You know, I watch a lot of medical dramas as well, and like if you're short of oxygen for too long, you can have lasting damage from that. I hope that didn't occur. Anyway, my heart is with the families. I can't imagine the pain and suffering on top of losing a child involves. And my heart truly goes out to all of you who are affected by these 3 very sick women. A shame to the profession. Thank you so much for joining me. I do truly appreciate it. And yeah, I'll be back next week. I do have someone lined up for next week. Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting chat, shall we say. Yeah. Okay, I'm out of here. Please go do something fun and uplifting. Put something funny on TV, because this one has been a bit heavy. Yeah. Okay. Look after yourself, guys. Truly. Yeah. Okay. I will see you next week for another true crime. And I'll see you there. I'll be live tomorrow, by the way. I will be live. So stay tuned for that. A big thank you to all of my channel members too. Stay tuned. It's going to be the outro. Okay,